and welcome to Health Talk. My name is Carrie, and with us today is Mary Faye, registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator. Today's topic is going to be nutrition and meal planning. In a previous segment on diabetes, you mentioned that meal planning and food choices were important no matter what type of diabetes. Can you elaborate on this?
Yes, no matter what type of diabetes, whether it's type 1, type 2, gestational, or the type of diabetes that's caused by medications or disease, diet is the cornerstone of therapy. And that includes what we had previously termed as carbohydrate counting, as well as proper portions and other components.
What are the basic meal planning guidelines to help control blood sugar?
Well, the most important is to have meals spread throughout the day. So we recommend to the patients to have 3 meals and a bedtime snack. The other important parts are the portions. If someone is measuring their carbohydrates, which we'll talk about in a minute, what is a half a cup? You want to exactly measure it and not guess that a particular glass is a half a cup or 8 ounces or 4 ounces or an 8-ounce portion. So we recommend that they're always making sure they measure it, because it's very easy to double the content of the meal if you aren't careful with the portions. The other is to eat about the same time each day. Not that we want patients to be regimented and within a minute, but I usually say try and have your meals within an hour of each other from day to day. Don't sleep in on the weekend till noon if you're up at 8 a.m. during the week. The patients will have a lot more success controlling their blood glucose value. Portions are, as I mentioned, important. Reading labels, knowing what the content of the food is. Fiber is a very important part of the meal, in that fiber helps fill a patient and they eat less, as well as the benefits of what are called soluble and insoluble fiber. That helps keep the cholesterol level down, the bad cholesterol level down, keeps a patient regular, and it also provides a low glycemic index meal. High glycemic index foods are those that are processed. So white bread, white pasta, white anything. I tell patients if it is microwavable or it's white, stay away from it. The other is the fat content. We know that our diabetes patients are 3 to 4 times the risk for a heart event, heart attack, stroke, and those, of course, we want to prevent. So we teach them how to limit the fat, which is a risk factor for the development of heart disease. So we teach them olive oil and canola oil are good types of oils. The other component is to make sure that you have a variety. If patients can blindfold themselves and go grocery shopping, it's probably a pretty mundane diet. And nutrition is a new science, and we want patients to get a variety because we don't know all the trace elements and things the body needs. So we encourage them to go to the produce section, to all of the fresh food, and encourage scratch cooking. And a lot of people have to learn how to cook, but those are the important basic guidelines of good meal planning.
All of these guidelines seem important, but what is the most important aspect?
The most important is to know how many carbohydrates you're consuming. There are 3 components in food that provide calories: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Proteins would be sources of meat, fish, cottage cheese, nuts, eggs. Those and fats, such as butter, margarine, salad dressing, do not directly affect the blood glucose level. Not that it isn't important to watch the portions from a calorie standpoint, but it is carbohydrates that we focus on. That is the component in food that raises the blood glucose level.
Can you explain more about the term carbohydrate counting and what foods are carbohydrates?
Carbohydrate counting is the method we use to help patients control their carbohydrate intake at meals to prevent those spikes in the blood glucose level. We've talked about target blood glucose levels pre and post meal. In order to prevent blood sugars from spiking or going high after a meal, we teach them about carbohydrate counting. So when I say what is a serving size of bread, 1 slice would be equal to 15 grams of carbohydrate. For a woman, for example, 3 to 4 servings a meal of carbohydrate is an appropriate amount. For men, 4 to 5. If it's a teenager, it may be even more than that, or someone who is a triathlete. But we teach them about how to count carbohydrates. 15 grams of carbohydrate is equal to 1 carb choice. So for example, for a woman, 3 to 4 choices for a meal. This would be 1 choice. If they had a sandwich, 2 slices of bread, that would be considered 2 carbohydrate choices. If they were to then add an apple or a fruit, that would be the 3rd, and then a glass of milk would be the 4th carbohydrate for that meal. Now, that's a good, well-rounded meal. I have chosen foods from different food groups, so the Food Guide Pyramid's a basic guide you can use to make sure that you're getting a variety, but that would limit the carbs. So you would not have a double sandwich, you wouldn't have a 16-ounce glass of milk, you wouldn't have an apple and a piece of cake. You would limit it to the 3 to 4 carbohydrate choices per meal. So when we're talking about carb counting, carbohydrate counting, we teach a patient how to read a food label. And on the label, the most important number, because there are a lot of numbers on here, is total carbohydrate. So when a patient is looking at that, total carbohydrate, not sugars, because that can be confusing. That is a subcategory of total carbohydrates. It is carbohydrates that you're counting. And 15, 18 grams of carbohydrate on a label with the serving size listed. So for example, for Cheerios, 3/4 of a cup of Cheerios is equal to 18 grams of carbohydrate. That would be 1 choice. So we teach them how to read the label. If it were to, say a patient wanted a double serving of cereal for breakfast. So they had 1.5 cups of Cheerios and a glass of milk. The Cheerios would count for 2. Because you're doubling the serving size, glass of milk, and 4 ounces of orange juice. And again, this is 4 ounces. It isn't the great big glasses we have in our home. That would be 4 choices for breakfast, and that would be an appropriate amount.
How does someone know how many carbohydrate choices they should have each meal? And what is a portion?
Well, for most women, it's 3 to 4, but that's the benefit of coming to see a dietitian, because depending on your age, your activity level, whether you need to lose weight, if you are 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight or more, what is the appropriate amount for you? Because we certainly don't want to put someone on a starvation diet either. So it's calculating that. But in general terms, for women, 3 to 4 servings per meal, and men, 4 to 5 servings. The foods that are considered carbohydrates in the portions, we have booklets that we give our patients that have the lists of all of the foods in them. So for example, if it were corn, it's a 1/2 cup. That is a 1/2 cup in the proper portion. If it's ice cream, it's a 1/2 cup for 1 carb choice. Now most people look at this and say, you've got to be kidding, I use my big Corral bowl and it's full. Well, if they are having more than a 1/2 cup, and it's a cup, then it counts for 2 carb choices. And maybe they're allowed enough carbs that they could have 2, but it is the proper portion that they're measuring. And we Americans have supersized everything. When I show patients a 4-inch pancake is a carb choice, and they think about some of our local restaurants that the entire plate is filled with 2 or 3 pancakes, we have to teach them, what is the proper amount that is allowed. For example, baked potatoes. Now this is a medium baked potato. This would be 2 carb choices. So we provide them with lists of foods that outline exactly for the carbohydrates, whether it is a fruit, a starch, a dessert. If they want brownies, how much can they have? If they have a birthday coming, a 2-inch square, I know it isn't a lot, but a 2-inch square of a cake is a carb choice. If they want to leave the frosting on it, it's 2. But knowing how to measure it, they then can work that into their meal plan with ultimately the goal of preventing those blood glucose spikes after the meal. And we know that's what we're trying to control to prevent the complications of diabetes. Get that hemoglobin A1C down, the target blood glucose levels. So portions, and when patients say, well, I have a tablespoon, one of those big spoons in my drawer, I say get your measuring spoons out, and if you don't have any, they aren't very costly. And this is a tablespoon. What does a tablespoon of peanut butter look like? How much is a tablespoon instead of a thick sandwich that you have a lot on? If it's a teaspoon of margarine, how much is that? The little pats of margarine. And remember, margarine doesn't raise the blood glucose level, but it does provide calories. So if someone's trying to lose weight, I say this little pat of butter is 50 calories. If you want to save the calories and lose the weight, you've got to be careful of your portion. So those are the most important parts of the meal, that you know the carbohydrate, you know how to choose the right kinds of foods, and then you know how to measure them. Some of the products that are on the market that are very deceiving would be, for example, yogurt. And there are many different types of yogurt on the market. And you see some of the commercials where the girl in the slim white bathing suit is diving into the pool after having eaten their yogurt. And you assume that if it's low-fat or fat-free, then it must be okay. But low-fat yogurt that is regular yogurt is loaded with carbohydrates. For example, this product, if you look and see total carbohydrate, 42 grams of carbohydrate. That's 3 carb choices all by itself. There's your meal. That's it. But if you were to choose light and lively yogurt that is 8, 10, or 12 grams, then it might even just be a half of a carbohydrate choice. Makes a big difference in how much more of a meal you can have. And the regular yogurt is what we call high glycemic index. So you're spiking the blood sugar when you've got that type of sugar that gets in the system quickly and raises the blood sugar. So again, it's all about controlling portions, types of foods, and total carbohydrate.
Does the food label help with figuring out the right amount per meal?
Yes, and that is what we teach patients. We have charts that say if it's between 12 and 20 grams of carbohydrate on the food label, and again, it's total carbohydrate, not sugars, that is what you use to calculate those carb choices. And remember, 15 grams of carbohydrate is a carbohydrate choice. So if, for example, you look at a label and for the serving size it says 1 cup is 29 grams, that's 2 carbohydrate choices that you know are part of your meal plan. We teach those ranges because not everything falls directly into 15 grams or 30 grams, as well as the portion size. The one thing that is confusing for patients is that sugar on the label, and we always say be very careful not to use just the sugars. The other thing that is deceiving on the labels are no sugar added products, because no sugar added doesn't mean carbohydrate free. So for example, no sugar added pie or no sugar added candy still contains carbohydrates. So always be careful with that. Sugar-free candy doesn't mean you can eat the whole bag. In fact, because it has sugar alcohols in it, there's a lot of GI discomfort if you consume a lot of those. But we teach the patients on that, what information is on the label that helps me do some meal planning. And we know it's tedious to begin with because I know right away orange juice is a half a cup is 1 carb. You may not know that. So then doing a grocery list, doing some meal planning ahead of time, I really recommend patients to do that on their day off. So they're not trying to figure out right before a meal, what can I have? They're starving and they say, oh, the heck with it, call for the sub or the pizza. Not that you can't on occasion work that in, but you're more likely to adhere to your meal plan if you do some planning ahead.
So many people eat at fast food places or in restaurants. How does someone with diabetes decide what to eat?
Well, if they go in with the idea of the basic guidelines, fruits and vegetables are good. Foods that are not swimming in gravy, butter, or cheese sauces are good choices, as well as knowing that all of the chain restaurants have their nutritional information available. So we teach patients that's the first thing you ask for. Or if you're in McDonald's or Burger King, look right up on the poster that they have. Tim Hortons has theirs on the back of their placemat. So you can see immediately what is what the carbohydrate content is, and some people will be shocked. Some of the breakfast meals at McDonald's are 1,200 and 1,300 calories and 90 to 100 grams of carbohydrate. There's practically 2 meals for a female. So we teach them to ask for those products, and if the customer service staff say, well, I don't know, I don't have it, or we're out, say, well, I'm coming here frequently, or once a month, I really need that information, could you order it? The more we, as consumers, ask for that, the more likely they'll oblige. But if you are at a restaurant that is a home-style restaurant that is not a chain, then knowing your portions from home, and you know what those look like on your plate at home. This is a 3.5 ounce portion of meatloaf. This is a medium baked potato. This would be a 1/2 cup of mashed potato. That when you see it in the restaurant, you can say, oh, that's double what I'm supposed to have. Please give me a box. I'll take the rest home and have it for lunch tomorrow. So that's why it's good to do that at home, so that when you are out, you can better estimate.
In the beginning of this segment, you mentioned about fats not directly affecting blood glucose, but do patients have to choose certain kinds of fats?
Yes. As I mentioned, those with diabetes are at 3 to 4 times the risk of developing heart disease. So we know that different types of fats raise the blood cholesterol level and the triglyceride level, and that then puts them at risk for a heart event. As well as there are monosaturated fats, olive oil and canola oil, nuts, salmon, tuna have beneficial fats that help keep the LDL down, HDL up, and have what are called omega-3 fatty acids that decrease the inflammatory process, which is damaging to the blood vessels. So we teach patients that they want to limit the fats because they are a concentrated source of calories if they're trying to lose weight, but also the type of fat, that don't pick those with a lot of trans fats. If when you look at a label, you see, and I don't have a product here that would have it, but if you see partially hydrogenated oils at the beginning of the label, because the foods on a label are listed according to the amount in the food, partially hydrogenated are trans fats, and those are damaging to the blood vessels. So we teach patients that.
For patients cooking at home, how do they adapt their own recipes?
Very similar ways that they can look at the products in the recipe and see if it contains butter. Can I use an olive or canola oil instead? Is there some way I can replace the oils in, for example, a banana bread or a zucchini bread? You can use applesauce instead of oil and save about 1,000 calories in that loaf of bread. So we teach them those things. If they are interested in knowing the exact nutrient content, we also give them websites that they can enter in the ingredients, and it will print out actually what the content is based on the serving sizes, on the number of servings that the recipe yields. Or they can call us, and we can help them.
Can these patients eat snacks? And are certain snacks better than others?
Yes, patients can eat snacks, and we do teach patients to think of their meals in blocks of time. So as we were talking about females having 3 to 4 carb choices at a meal, think about your meals as, say, from, if you're on a day shift, 7:30 in the morning till 9:30, 10 in the morning. So you might have 3 of your carb choices at breakfast at home, and when everyone else is eating their donut at 9:30 or 10, you can have a 1/2 of an English muffin with some sugar-free jelly. Or you could have fresh fruit, have an apple, have your other carb choice then. The same with lunch, between 11 and 2. So maybe have 3 of your carb choices at lunch and 1 in the afternoon. So then you're not exceeding your carbohydrate limit, and you're preventing that spike in the blood glucose. Now, some of our patients, if they're very active or a teenager, we work carb snacks in addition to the meals. So it depends again on the activity level for patients, or if a patient normally isn't, all of a sudden their friends are saying, we're putting up a fence today, could you help us? They may need an additional snack because they're expending that many more calories, and we don't want their blood glucose level to drop too much. The other snack we really encourage patients to have unless they go to bed early or they have gastric reflux, is a bedtime snack, because the medications are working throughout the day and throughout the night, and we don't want them to drop low while they're sleeping. So we encourage them to have a snack. The best types of snacks are the products we've been talking about, fruits and whole grains, with a protein source. For example, a patient may like to have cereal and milk for a night snack, or whole grain toast with some peanut butter. It might be just a glass of milk with some graham crackers, a yogurt. Those are good choices. Again, the healthy foods that we have outlined. One of the favorite ones that my patients like is popcorn. 3 cups of popcorn. I tell them that's popped, not the kernels. 3 cups of popcorn is a great night snack. Put a little Parmesan cheese on it instead of butter. You can save a lot of calories. So again, it's just healthy choices for snacks.
What about sodium and alcohol? Are these limited too?
Yes, because most of our patients have high blood pressure or are at risk for cardiac disease, we recommend that they limit the sodium to less than 3 to 4 milligrams per day. And if they look on a label, the sodium is listed in milligrams, and kind of can become difficult mathematically, but if you think of meals about 500, 600, 700 milligrams per meal, if you're looking at a, say, healthy choice entree for supper, and you think, okay, 3 times 7, 700, that's 2,100 milligrams in a day, that's okay. I'm staying within my allotment for the day. And the reason sodium is limited is it is water-loving, and so it holds onto water. And it's not just swelling of the hands and feet, it also is fluid around the heart, makes the heart work harder, makes the blood pressure go up. So we encourage those with high blood pressure and with diabetes especially to be careful of the sodium. Alcohol also, and this is health-wise for everyone, that limiting alcohol to 1 drink per day for a female and 2 drinks per day for a male is what is recommended. What we do talk with patients about with diabetes is to be careful of the mixer. If you are going to use ginger ale, it should be diet ginger ale. Hard liquor does not raise the blood sugar. So I have patients who say, oh, my scotch and water's okay. It is. They can have that. In, again, 1 to 2 servings per day for a man, 1 for a female. But those that have sugar or carbohydrate in them are those that have to be eliminated pretty much. 3 ounces of wine is fine. A beer does have carbohydrate in it, so I'll tell a man if he wants to have a beer with his meal, then he has to cut out one of his carb choices for that meal. The other caution with alcohol is, particularly for those on insulin, is if a patient's blood glucose goes low because of too much insulin or not enough food or too much exercise, alcohol blocks the liver, the body's ability to respond to a low and go find stored sugar in the body. So we tell them, please, please be careful. If you're going to have a drink, sit down and have a meal with it so that hypoglycemia doesn't happen.
Can we summarize the main concepts of nutrition and meal planning?
Main concepts are counting carbohydrates, spreading the meals throughout the day so that you're not causing those spikes in the blood glucose level, choosing healthy foods that are what I call nutrient dense, those that have lots of vitamins and minerals. Whatever you're putting in your mouth, does it contain vitamins or minerals? And the one thing that I forgot to mention are high-calorie beverages. We have cappuccino and carbonated beverages, pop, that is loaded with sugar. Those really have to be eliminated because they will cause the spikes and they contribute a lot of calories. A lot of our obesity in our country, which leads to type 2 diabetes, is caused by excess calories and carbohydrate from beverages. So being careful of those. And the fiber, the fats, all of those as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Mary.
Thank you. We're
just about out of time for today. For more information on nutrition and meal planning, you can visit www.ogh.org. We look forward to seeing you next time on Health Talk.